We've got the 4th generation iPad here. We've got the 5th generation iPad Air right here. We're going to compare the two and maybe if you should upgrade. Next on iPad 365. Hey everybody, Jeffrey Powers here. Welcome to iPad 365, the show where we look at apps to keep your, look at iPads to keep your iPad aplay. We're going to be talking about this, the 4th generation iPad versus the 5th generation iPad, otherwise known as iPad Air, which I just purchased. First of all, I want to let you know my Twitter handle is iPad365. You can go there and shout out and follow and see what episodes come up there. Otherwise, you can email me at show@ipad-365.com, ipad-365.com, and you'll get all the information right in your email box. And of course, if you have a product, if you have an app or an accessory that you want me to take a look at, let me know and we'll get it on the show. So last night I made the purchase. I did a Black Friday purchase, and so I got a gift card, so I saved a few dollars on my new iPad Air. However, you know, the iPad 4, if this is the 4th generation, I try and keep as current as possible on iPad so you get the latest and greatest information along with me. And I've sat in line while I was waiting for my iPad Air, and I was talking to the people, and they were saying, you know, you can either get the iPad Air or the iPad 2nd generation. We were at Target, so they actually did have 4th generation iPads there. And of course, the iPad Mini versus the iPad Mini Retina. And the one thing that they kept asking was, what are the big differences when it comes to the 4th generation iPad versus the iPad Air? Well, in all reality, technically what Apple said is this pretty much doubles what this used to do. Two reasons why I ended up getting the iPad Air myself. One is 64-bit technology, 64-bit chip in there, so apps will start using that 64-bit technology to run. Whether they'll be able to run onto this iPad or not remains to be seen. If there's a process that we normally in the tech area called thunking, if there's a process where they can take an app that's 64-bit and thunk it down to a 32-bit app onto your older iPad, then yeah, it will work. But there's always a possibility that they say this is 64-bit only, will not work on this. Whether that happens right away or not, I don't think so. It'll take a little while, but eventually you'll find apps that work here and work better on here than work on here. The other thing is there's two processors. There's a processor and a coprocessor inside the Air. The reason why is for those apps, like for instance, this is a Fitbug right here, which is a health monitoring system. So it basically watches my steps, figures out my sleep cycle and stuff like that, and records it. Normally you record onto an iPhone, but I have it recording onto my iPad. And with this processing combination with the M7 A7 processor, I can actually send information from this device over to here without having this thing fully turn itself on, whereas this one would actually have to turn itself on to do that, which would take up a little bit more battery. Now, once again, a lot of these apps that would utilize 64-bit technology and the dual processor aren't just out yet. I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing them, if there isn't an app out there right now, if we start seeing them very soon. Apps like GarageBand, apps like Keynote and iMovie, they'll all utilize the 64-bit technology because they are made by Apple, but they'll have the ability to run on the older iPad as well. So the big question was, as I was talking to the people in line, should they upgrade, if they're 4th generation, should they upgrade to the iPad Air or should they stick with the 4th generation iPad? Because there is one other thing that I noticed when I talked to these people in line, and that is they already have iPads. Most of them have iPads. Some of them are switching up to the iPad Air because there's a crack on the screen on their older iPad, or they have an iPad 2 or an iPad 1, and now it's time to make the upgrade to the newest iPad. And I totally agree. If you've got an iPad 2 and an iPad 1, definitely get up to the iPad Air so you can go from there. If you've got the 3rd generation or the 4th generation iPad, you could possibly wait till next year before you get your newest iPad. Now, let's talk a little bit about how this all works and what I did to test this to kind of show you what I mean. This is the first test that I did. I took the iPads and I charged them to 100%. And then I went in and I closed every single app inside the iPad. I turned off both iPads and then turned them back on, so no extra processes were running, no Bluetooth was running, Wi-Fi was running because these are Wi-Fi model iPads, and I wanted to keep true to that. So there'll be signals that would be sent back and forth. Now the coolest thing about both of these iPads is they're almost identical. So what I did was I closed all the apps, rebooted both iPads, and then opened up the clock app and set them side by side. And I set them for about 45 minutes, and you're seeing that right now. You're seeing the battery life of just the one app going, and as you can see, it's really not much of a difference. The iPad Air winning on that. So in the end, if I was to continue to let this run and let those two iPads go down to 0, the iPad Air would win in that situation. The fourth generation would have to turn itself off before. Now the next thing I did was a whole host of different apps opening, closing, turning on, turning off the iPad to see which one is faster, which one's better. When turning it off, of course, both iPads pretty much comparable. Turning it back on, the iPad Air actually won on that challenge over the fourth generation iPad. So just a little bit longer, not much of a big difference, but if you really need to turn off and turn on your iPad really, really quick, then the iPad Air will win in that situation. Opening up apps, you can see the difference ever so slightly. It's one app will open up just a little bit faster on the iPad Air over the iPad, but there are some apps, especially older apps, that do work a little bit better on the fourth generation iPad than the iPad Air. I'm not sure if it's trying to figure out that whole, if the 64-bit, 32-bit thing, that extra instruction set getting in the way or not, but I do know that I saw a couple apps open up a lot quicker in the fourth generation over the iPad Air, and especially ones that haven't been updated in a little while. And of course, you're seeing this. I'm opening up some apps, Pitfall being one, of course, Clash of Clans, one of my favorite apps. Looking at the Retina screens, there's really no difference on the Retina screen. So if you're hoping for a little bit more clarity, it's not there. But when you're running games, you'll see faster process, so you might not see jumps or lags in the system. Of course, these are higher end games, not the farming games, but we're talking like real-time first player type games and stuff like that. Now let's talk about size, and there's a big difference in this iPad Air. Now, of course, this is my Zag case, my Zag Folio case. I had this ever since my iPad 2, and it's done me well. But of course, with the new iPad, it doesn't fit anymore. Here, let me show you this. Watch. I could definitely use the keyboard, that's for sure. But if I was to try and put it into the case, it kind of fits and kind of works, but you can feel it being really loose. And yeah, it definitely works for the case, but I would not want to keep it in here. As you can see, it's hard to unlatch apparently. So I could actually put it back into the case, but it definitely feels like it doesn't belong in here. So I'll probably have to get a new case. And of course, companies like Zag are making new versions of their cases, their Folio cases. Let's talk, we'll basically show you the size here. Let's do this. We'll take the fourth generation iPad, we'll set it right here. We're gonna set the iPad Air right on top of the fourth generation iPad. And these might turn on because of the magnetic pull there. So I'm gonna put it corner to corner. And I'm just gonna flip it up here. As you can see, there's a big difference on the width as opposed to the height. But there is also a difference on the height of the iPad. So this is actually a lot smaller, and of course that is the screen. That's because the borders are a lot smaller. You can't see this from the black to the white, but you see about, I'd say about an inch right here to here, whereas this is probably about half of that. So it's definitely a smaller iPad, just by a little bit on that way. Of course, if we do go over and put them side by side, you can't see the difference too much. You can't see the difference too much, but if I'm gonna run my finger and go like this, you can actually see my finger bump down as I'm going from one. There is a lip right there. So it is actually a lot smaller. And of course, the weight is lighter. This is 1.43 pounds, where this is just 1 pound. I had this up in my hand last night, loading up the software, and it felt more comfortable holding this than holding this one. And in fact, that was one of the biggest problems I've had with an iPad. This one was a little bit more comfortable. Now, with all that said, the real question is, do you want to make the upgrade from this one to this one? In all reality, after running all these tests, you do see a difference in speed, you do see a difference in battery life, but the difference is not that much comparable. If you use your iPad for graphic intense gaming or anything like that, yeah, maybe it will be time to actually go to the iPad Air. If you're just doing the Facebook and the email and playing Clash of Clans or Heyday or some other farming game, maybe some Candy Crush, this one's right here, because there's no difference in the screen. There's definitely no difference in the camera. It's a 5 megapixel camera on the back, 1.3 on the front. No change at all. That was the biggest disappointment with the iPad Air, and I really wish they would have bumped it up to at least an 8 megapixel camera, but Apple did not do that, and I'm really disappointed on that. Every other test, the iPad Air did function better than the 4th generation iPad. However, we're talking minimal changes. If you're getting into wearable technology like I have, and you want to save power on that, especially the new apps coming out, the iPad Air might be the one for you. All right, there's a lot of information here, and you might be a little bit confused, or maybe you have a question I didn't think of, and I can definitely test it for you. Let me know simply by tweeting me over at iPad365. Of course, the email address is show@ipad-365.com. One other thing, and that is the next step down from the iPad Air that they're selling at Apple is the iPad 2. I'm not exactly sure who made that decision at Apple that the iPad 2 is a good step down from the iPad Air, but I highly, highly, highly recommend you do not purchase an iPad 2. If you buy anything, go find yourself a 3rd or a 4th generation iPad and get that over an iPad 2. I completely stepped over iPad mini and iPad mini Retina. I am actually giving the green light now. The reason why is because even though it doesn't have everything that the iPad Air has, especially that dual chip combo, it does have everything comparable to the iPad 4th generation. And I like that a lot. I think that the iPad mini Retina is going to be a great seller this holiday season. All right, we will be back next time with another episode of iPad 365, a little bit of the holiday schedule coming to you. Of course, I go out to Consumer Electronics Show every single January, so the beginning of January till about the 3rd week of January, we're pretty much not going to be doing any shows. We'll take the mid-season break around the 3rd week of December. And of course, I will definitely be doing the 12 apps of Christmas episode, version number 3, coming up in the next couple weeks. And next time I'm going to show you an app where you can take some pictures and do some touch-up so you can post them up on your walls without, having blemishes and stuff like that. Yeah, it's disgusting. Anyway, my name is Jeffrey Powers. Thanks a lot for watching. Thanks a lot for listening. We will see you next time when it will be another episode of iPad 365. We'll have an app to review, and until then, you guys, geek out.